What's good? Today I am playing around with the lighting again. I just finished a project where I was using this lighting and I liked it, so I was like, hey, let me just use it for my video. So today I wanted to jump right into it. I just wanted to speak about the mixing and mastering process. This actually came about as a question. Someone sent me a question and they were like, yo, maybe you can chat about this in one of your VNs. So I was like, let's do it. So here we are, talking about mixing and mastering. Now, mixing and mastering is tough, right? For everybody involved. You've got the person who actually sits behind the boards and needs to do the mixing and the mastering. You've got the people who need to convey their thoughts of what they want in a mix and master. And there's always miscommunication. I've mixed hundreds of songs. I'm not even joking, hundreds of tracks over the past 16 years now. And communication is the biggest issue, as it is with most things, right? Getting your idea out of your head and into the machine, into your song, is the biggest issue for artists, singers, rappers, songwriters, music producers, beat makers. Sometimes you struggle to get your ideas out, and that for me is one of the biggest things that I've seen with mixing and mastering. So I sort of think of it like a spectrum. When it comes to communication, you've got people who are very technical in the way that they speak, in the way that they think, and then there's people who are quite creative and quite abstract. I believe that everybody's got a little bit of both in them, right? Some people are a little bit more balanced than others, whereas some other people lean heavily towards the one side or heavily towards the other side. And I would say that there's no optimum way to be, but it does help you to be able to communicate with both types of people, right? I know people will be like, yeah, I'm a little bit of both. Yes, we're all a little bit of both, but everybody will tend to lean more towards one side. You will have to figure that out for yourself. But being able to relate on both sides will make the whole process smoother for you. For me personally, I am quite technical. I can get quite technical with my terms. Not all the way technical. There's terms I don't know. I didn't go to school for any of this stuff. So there's places where I don't have any knowledge, like music theory. I don't know music theory well, in fact, at all. So that's a zero for me there. But when it comes to speaking about what it is I want to do to your track in terms of what I practically going to do, I'm going to bring the EQ in, I'm going to turn down this thing between these hertz, and I'm going to go to the delay, and I'm going to change it to half step, and I'm going to have it at this sort of intensity. That's all still quite technical. But then in terms of being more creative, I do have aspect, and I've had to learn actually. I wasn't like this before, but I can express myself more in a more abstract way to say, I'm just going to bring the hi-hats out a little bit more. I'm going to make it seem like we are outside. I'm going to make it feel like we're in less of a hall and more of an auditorium. You know what I'm saying? Where I'm able to take it and I'm able to apply it to real world examples. And I've seen that when I'm able to do that well, then it becomes a simple process, because I've spoken to a lot of people that will speak back to me in that same way. And if we can communicate in that way, and I can keep words like reverb out of it, I can keep words like delay and compression, I keep it out of the conversation. Yeah, so if you can get to a place where you understand, if you're very, very technical and you're able to simplify things for your clients, don't treat them like they're a person that you're going to have an interaction with and they're going to go after that. Treat them like you guys are in a relationship, like you're going to have to speak after this. So get them to understand where you're coming from. And sure, sometimes it might mean them learning the words and you teaching them. That can be part of the learning experience. Actually, you can't just call it echo. You have to call it either reverb or delay. Is it the thing where you sound like you're in a toilet, or is it the thing that if we are out in the open in the mountains and I shout and I get that, that echo that comes back to me, which is delay, right? And then that becomes it becomes a back and forth teaching process, right? But at the same time, you can explain it in a way where you leave the words out of it. So that's the first thing. Communication is the biggest thing, and I'm staying on it because it makes or breaks the whole process. Because as a person sitting behind the boards, when people are saying things to you and they're saying nonsense, or what you think is nonsense, and they can't they can't express themselves. It's like not knowing the language. I can't express myself in certain languages. Therefore, when I'm in that environment, I'll say one or two words, but I won't really get the idea across, right? So learn the terminology. If you are overly creative and you're overly abstract, learn the terminology because it'll make your life easier. And look, you don't have to sound smart, but at least you'll be able to get your idea across without having to pull your hair out. In the same way, if you're too technical in the way that you speak, learn to ease up on the words and learn how to describe what you're going to do. Describe it, right? It's always nice when you have a reference track, because then you're just like, hey, do what they did at 34 seconds. That repeat effect, do that. But we don't always have that, right? We don't always have that luxury of having a reference track. Cool. I'm going to stop talking about communication. The next point is wave separates. You need to get a hold of wave separates if you can. Of the beat, I know sometimes you might have to pay extra, but it helps at the end of the day. Look, if you don't have the budget, you don't have the budget. You can't afford it, you can't afford it. But it does help because there'll be times where you need the kick to stand out. And you can't take a random MP3 and pull, well, maybe with AI now you can, but you can't randomly pull out accurately, 100% accurately, pull out the kick and, boost its volume without affecting other things. If all you're dealing with is a low quality MP3 file, having those separates to be able to say, I've got the kick, I've got the snare, I've got whatever. Oh, the snare is too loud. I can just bring the volume of the snare down alone without having to affect the other volumes. That's why having separates helps. Same with vocals as well. You can send your vocals through as just one vocal file with multiple things. You've done your backups in there, you've done everything in there. But as an engineer, I can't with my gear differentiate between backing vocals. Maybe I need to EQ them differently. Main vocals, chorus vocals, bridge vocals, second verse versus first verse. If it's different people, it becomes tough. So separates if you can get them. Formats. People talk about different formats. I'm not going to go into what the formats are. MP3, wave. Is it 16-bit wave? Is it 24-bit wave? 32-bit? Speak to your engineer. Speak to the person who's going to be working on your track. Ask them what they want, or ask them what would be best. Some people believe 32-bit float this. Some people are like, it doesn't matter, 16. Some people are like, all I have is an MP3. And I've worked on all of them, and to be honest, at the end of the day, fundamentally, getting your song into certain places, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you have to have the best quality separates, right? Or even separates at all. There's many songs I've gotten onto radio and onto TV where all we were dealing with was an MP3. And it's crazy. I hear it. I'm like, that actually sounds pretty cool. Through the TV, I'm like, But obviously everybody's like, we're all none the wiser. So yeah, I wouldn't harp on that for too long. Just ask the engineer what they want and work based on that. So a big don't is don't just record everything in FL Studio and send your FL Studio your FL zip file. Don't do that. Don't do that unless the person asks for it. Don't do that. I don't mix in FL Studio. So if you send me your FL zip file, I might not be able to open it. If I am able to open it, I'm going to have to go and export everything from there as separates and then take it across to the other DAW and then load it all in there, make sure it's all the same bitrate. There's a lot that's not a lot. Look, in terms of work time, it can take anywhere between 10 and 15 extra minutes over and above what I'm doing, but those are 10-15 extra minutes that I didn't have to deal with. So just make sure when you're sending your files through, make sure you send them with having spoken to the person who's going to be working on your stuff. You want to make life as easy for that engineer as possible. In the same way, the engineer is obviously trying to make life easier for themselves, which is, it's what anybody would do. Cool. Yeah. So if you can get your communication right, you will be gravy in terms of having your track, getting it to where you need to get it to. If you're an artist and you have a particular sound you're going for, come through with, I would say, no more than 2, maybe 3 reference tracks. I'd say 2 is a good place because you don't want to be pulling too many things from too many places, and this is a specific effect in a track that you hear, in which case, sure, bring a few more. But I'd say maybe two. One is ideal, but having two is a decent space. Send that all to the engineer and say, look, if anything, just model it off of this thing. Other than that, in this day and age, majority of the work is done in such a way that the engineer and the artist aren't in the same room. Sometimes the artist just doesn't care to be a part of the mixing process. I've worked with people like that. So, understand that people are different. We're all going to do things differently, but you can make life easier. Peace.